My name is Marlo, and I never thought a 2-week vacation could destroy a 6-year marriage, but when I got home from what was supposed to be a peaceful escape, I found an empty house and divorce papers waiting for me instead. I stood outside my front door, suitcase beside me, still carrying the warmth of the Caribbean sun on my skin, while the silence around me felt colder than anything I'd ever known before. The first thing I noticed was that Caleb's car was missing from the driveway. That small detail felt strange, because he always parked in the exact same spot near the garage, even during our worst arguments over the years. I told myself he'd probably gone somewhere nearby, groceries, maybe some unexpected welcome home plan, but the empty porch slowly started telling me a different story the longer I stood there. I searched for the spare key we kept hidden under a stone decoration near the entrance, but it was gone. My hands went unsteady ringing the doorbell, waiting. After several minutes with no answer, I sat down on the front steps, holding my suitcase handle tightly, wondering how a trip meant to clear my mind had somehow flipped my entire life upside down instead. When I booked that flight, I never believed I was ending my marriage. I told myself I just needed silence, distance, time to remember who I was outside of being a wife for once. I blocked Caleb on every platform, not wanting emotional conversations, guilt, or his gentle voice making me second-guess a decision before I'd even figured myself out properly. Our marriage wasn't filled with constant fighting or cruelty, honestly, it was comfortable. But somewhere along the way, comfort started feeling like a cage instead of a home. Caleb was the kind of husband who made breakfast every weekend, remembered every important date without being reminded, always checked that I'd gotten home safe. Somehow, I'd become frustrated by the exact kindness I used to pray for finding years earlier. My friends noticed my restlessness before I fully understood it myself. My friend Whitney told me I'd spent my entire adult life focused on responsibilities, never truly experiencing real independence on my own terms. Her advice sounded exciting at the time, so I booked a solo trip to a beautiful island and convinced myself finding myself was the answer to whatever was actually bothering me. The night before I left, Caleb hugged me longer than usual, quietly saying he'd be there whenever I was ready to talk about whatever this was. His sadness was obvious, but instead of comforting him, I avoided looking too closely, knowing his pain would make me feel responsible for changing my plans. The next morning, I blocked him before boarding my flight, telling myself it was only temporary, just space, nothing more. At first, the vacation felt like real freedom. Colorful streets, ocean views, strangers who only knew me as a carefree traveler passing through. For a few days, I felt young again, disconnected from every responsibility waiting back home. But as the excitement faded, memories of Caleb started showing up everywhere, reminding me of the person I'd quietly pushed away. I started remembering small moments I'd ignored for years, Caleb singing badly in the car just to make me laugh, making soup when I was sick, holding my hand through difficult nights without needing to be asked. The life I'd once called boring suddenly looked precious in hindsight. Still, my pride kept me from admitting I missed him, that I might have made a terrible mistake leaving the way I had. On the 5th day of the trip, a message from Whitney changed everything. She asked if I'd seen what Caleb's brother had posted, because people were saying Caleb had finally left. I'd tried contacting him immediately, but every place I'd blocked him, he'd now blocked right back. For the first time, I felt the exact same rejection I'd caused him to feel first. I spent the rest of that day walking alone near the shore, watching couples laugh together while I wondered if I'd destroyed something that could never actually be repaired. I wanted Caleb to question me, argue with me, ask why I'd disappeared like that. Instead, I had to face the truth that I'd created the distance, and he'd simply, finally, accepted it as real. Getting home, the silence inside the house felt unbearable. The furniture was all still there, but the feeling of it being our home was completely gone. Caleb's side of the closet was almost empty, his shoes gone, the small everyday items that showed he'd ever lived there missing one by one. No angry note. No accusation. No explanation waiting for me anywhere. I called his brother, Emmett, hoping for answers, and after a long pause, he finally told me the truth. Caleb had left town needing a fresh start. He'd spent years trying to keep our relationship strong, but my sudden disappearance had broken something in him he couldn't just talk himself back from. I wanted to defend myself on the phone, but I realized there weren't any words that could actually change what had already happened. The next day, I saw a photo online that made my heart race. Caleb was standing near a peaceful coastline beside a woman who appeared to be helping people through some kind of healing program. For a moment, I assumed he'd replaced me already, but then I checked our shared account and found something that hurt even more than that assumption had. He'd left every dollar untouched and quietly transferred his share over to me. Soon after, an envelope arrived in Caleb's handwriting. Inside was a letter, calm instead of angry, and somehow that hurt worse than any accusation could have landed. He explained he'd waited for me to come home, but eventually realized I hadn't just been taking a vacation. I'd been emotionally leaving long before I ever packed that suitcase. He wrote that after I blocked him, he couldn't sleep or eat properly, so he went to a quiet retreat to rebuild himself from the ground up. The woman in the photo was his counselor there, someone who'd helped him understand that he deserved love too, not just the version of love that kept shrinking to fit around me. He was moving overseas for a new job, he wrote, and wanted me to understand one thing clearly: he still loved me, but he'd finally learned how to love himself as well. Months later, I still live in that same house, though it feels completely different now, quieter in a way that has nothing to do with the rooms being empty. I started therapy, began writing through my feelings instead of running from them, and accepted that my search for freedom had come with a cost I never once considered while booking that flight. I went back to that same beach where I'd once felt so free, and wrote in the sand that I'd blocked love because I wanted space, never expecting that space would turn into a goodbye I couldn't undo. If this one hit home, subscribe for more.